bit about spring training. Spring training for our national pastime. You know, baseball is an important part of American culture, and it has certain distinctive features as a game. One of those is that it is a long-haul sport. It's contrasted with maybe a boxing championship match that takes place and is over within a couple minutes. Baseball lasts for months, and we have to play 160-some games to determine a winner, and then we go into the playoffs and the World Series. And so it's very much of a long-haul character to it. And it all starts in the mind of the average fan with the great period of spring training. It has a certain nostalgia about it. It gets us off to a good start in looking at what this baseball season is all about. So I wondered, Mark, if you wanted to say anything about your own perceptions of spring training. I guess all of us sports fans have certain images that go with that and ways that we perceive that part of the baseball season.
I always look at it as a fresh start. It's a new beginning no matter what happened the previous season. Spring training always is a fresh beginning. Even if you were in last place the year before, there's a certain degree of optimism that you have during the spring training. You get a chance to look at some of the new players that are on the team. You get a chance to look at some of the veterans you've acquired in trades. Maybe you get to look at a new manager. Maybe a team has had a number of losing seasons in a row, but always that springtime you get a chance to test and experiment, and you begin to feel a little bit hopeful about how things are going to be going. And the interesting thing about it, too, is when it's over, when the spring part of it is over, the season then begins. So even if you had a bad spring, and you've been looking forward to your team doing well, and you've got all this optimism about new players and guys coming back off of injuries, and then you go 2-20 in spring training, well, you can say, well, that really didn't count for anything. And there's kind of a positive aspect of that, too, because you can say, well, whew, boy, I'm glad that doesn't really count for anything. We've been here for 6 weeks in Florida or Arizona, and it doesn't mean anything. It all begins now April 6th or 7th, and we get to start all over again. And I think that is really good. I think a lot of people look for that in their own lives, a chance to say, gosh, we had a really lousy week at work, but Monday, we're going to start all over again, and it's not going to be like last week. Or this new job I'm taking is not going to be like the last one I had. You have players that go from team to team. Jack Clark looks like he's going to be looking for another team this year. And every team he goes to, they realize his past and the certain baggage that he carries along. And yet everybody's looking for that kind of player and thinking, well, I know he was a little difficult last year, and I know we paid $2 million for this guy, and he didn't hit his weight, but doggone, if he hits like he did 3 years ago, we're going to be in great shape. So you take that chance, and there's always that kind of renewal that you get in spring training, which is, I find, very refreshing.
That's really well said, Mark, and I think it captures, as you suggested, a big part of what we're about as human beings, because in life very often we get down on ourselves and things aren't going well and we've disappointed ourselves and the project has failed, and we have to have a way of thinking, I can begin again, I can get started once more, I'm not imprisoned in that kind of fate. And the way you described it, I think, with the baseball season is very helpful, because what we've seen in the recent past, as a matter of fact, are teams going from last place to first place in the next season. And when other teams see that, this is possible, it really does give a sense of renewal. And I was thinking, too, it also goes with us in the North with the idea of looking forward to spring. It's sort of getting a head start. It's really not spring here yet up north. But
you can listen to the games.
That's right. The game's going to be on the radio, and it's going to set a new tone, and it's a reminder that indeed springtime will come for us before long. So your theme of fresh beginnings, I think, is a very important one, and it carries that for a lot of people. And you notice, no matter how poorly your team did the year before, when we're down there in spring training, we go, we could have the hope this pitcher might come around this year. and we've got this new acquisition, and maybe some of the younger players are going to develop faster than we thought they would, and everybody becomes sort of optimistic. It starts with the owners, works its way through the players, and comes into the minds and hearts of the fans, and that's what sort of gets us going for this long haul once again.
And what you get too in baseball, as with other sports, I think, is you see surprises. You will see players that you never heard of before, somebody that's been a career minor leaguer. There's a guy that's going to be playing for Boston this year who's been like 10, 12 years in the minor leagues. They had an article in the paper on it not too long ago. And he's going to get a chance to play now after all these years of obscurity, after playing well in high school and being a star there and going to college and being a star there. He's had all this obscurity, and now he's going to get the chance to play in the big leagues for the big show. And you never know when somebody like that is going to come along. Or
almost every spring training we read about some phenom, don't we? Of course, my memory goes back to people like Mickey Mantle when he came to spring training, and the great press outcry over this new phenomenon. He could run and throw and hit with power from both sides, and he was going to burn up the league. It was a remarkable kind of thing, and there was so much excitement generated. Something I think people don't remember about Mickey Mantle was that after all that excitement in spring training, he went into the majors, and before it wasn't too long before he was down in the minor leagues, because I remember seeing him playing for Kansas City then against the Toledo Mud Hens, and standing right there about 1 foot away from him as he walked to the locker. I think he had 4 for 5 that day, and they had decided maybe they better call him back up to the Yankees again. So you have that phenomenon of the great rookie that's going to come through and be the new Joe DiMaggio or the new Babe Ruth or the new Walter Johnson. It is a tremendous time for excitement like that, and people latch on to the new players, I think.
And I think, too, you look at other people, like I'm going to be looking particularly at my White Sox and Bo Jackson this year. I'm really interested to see if he's going to be able to play. And
that captures my imagination, too, Mark. I feel the same way, even though I don't share your passion for the White Sox. But here's a man that was so down and out. Do you remember all the newspaper reports that said it was impossible that he would ever run again? It was impossible to play baseball.
People thought he couldn't walk again. They were worried about that. He's walking with a limp everywhere.
Yeah.
How can you possibly run?
Yes.
And you're an outfielder. You've got to be able to cover some territory out there.
And then you saw those terrible films of the other year when he did try to come back and he was trying to limp down to first base after hitting the ball. And now you see the films on television and he's running much more normally.
It's amazing.
Is there a feeling that he might actually make it? I noticed the manager said, well, let's not pencil his name in yet in the starting lineup just after spring training is starting. But I wonder what the feeling is about whether he can really make it.
I believe he can. I don't know a great deal about the medical procedure that they did, but I also have an uncle that has gone through a similar procedure with a hip replacement. And I saw him maybe 2 months after the operation, and he's in his 70s, so he's not going to be up and running around, but he was walking with a cane, and I had visited up in Minnesota about a year before, and he had a tremendous difficulty in moving around. And when I saw him this next time and saw him able to walk without pain, although needs the cane, I thought, what a tremendous medical procedure this must be, that you've taken this section of bone out of a person's body, replaced it with whatever they put in there, if it's metal or plastics or whatever, and now he can move around pain-free, and by now he's probably gotten rid of the cane and is out fishing in Minnesota again. And I thought, this is amazing. And then I heard about this kind of procedure for Bo Jackson, and I thought, well, if a 70-year-old person can go through this medical procedure, which has got to be difficult on your system, and come through as well as he did, somebody that's in the kind of condition that a Bo Jackson is, and with that kind of dedication that he has to get himself into shape, I was beginning to believe that if the actual new system that they put into his body holds up under the strain of his workouts, that he should be able to play again.
I've seen tapes of him working out, and they really did go through rigorous kind of training.
6 hours a day.
Yes, and I mean, if anybody had the determination, it would be him Can you imagine the commercials that will come out, Mark, if he actually comes back and is successful? We'll get a whole new thing of Bo Knows. Bo Knows medicine.
Yeah, he'll probably be on. He'll be nooping it with
Bo Knows rehabilitation. But I find myself feeling exactly like you do about that. Even though I'm not a White Sox fan, I mean, I'm going to be rooting for him so hard. And it strikes me that it's got to do with the same idea of hope, of coming back, of starting fresh again, as somebody who looked like he was down and out. And again, it speaks to the general human condition. I'm a believer that sports can be a metaphor for life, and not that they are religion or our life, but they speak to us of many of the things that are important in the human condition. And another one that besides this fresh beginning is this idea of coming back, of being able to start over, of not being imprisoned in whatever problems that you had before. And we have to feel that in life, because unfortunately we often do mess up, and we often do find out that we've disappointed ourselves. And the question is always, are we going to wallow in that guilt? Are we going to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves? Will we become depressed and unable to function? Or are we going to find some new spirit within that would enable us to bounce back? And you're looking at somebody like Bo Jackson. Even if he doesn't make it, I think he will serve as an inspiration to so many people. Like, don't just lay down and die. Don't let yourself be paralyzed. Let's come back strong and find within that strength to try to make the good effort.
You know, it's kind of interesting that Lent kind of coincides with the beginning of spring training and leads up to that period of Easter, which is right around the time of the beginning of the season. And there are some parallels, particularly Lent more than, say, Advent leading up to Christmas,
yes.
Because it's a time where you find a lot of people that they look back on what they've done the last year, and they might say, geez, I didn't do very much this last year. I didn't do anything particularly positive. I didn't spend enough time with my kids, worried too much about money. And then they can take this time, if they use it, they can take this time to kind of renew themselves, get themselves, back into the flow of things, get a kind of a renewed spirit. And you have a lot of people that go to confession and that go to the various Lenten services, and they renew their spirit in a very similar way. And then all of a sudden Easter comes, and you think, well, this last 40 days I did do a little something.
Right.
I do feel a little bit better. You've got a new positive approach to life, and you see people both young, finding that feeling maybe for the first time of, hey, I've really improved myself, and people that are 70, 80 years old that have renewed themselves during this period of time. Yes. And it's very much a parallel to what you see in spring training, the young players and the older players all kind of getting together with kind of a common purpose that I know for the last 3 months, I've been eating food I shouldn't have, and I haven't been exercising, and I haven't been doing all the sort of things that I should have been doing to keep myself in shape. But now I'm going to work myself back into shape, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be on this opening day roster, and it's going to be a good season.
There's that challenge side to it. I noticed when I preached on Ash Wednesday to the college students this year, I was picking up that idea. It was right when the skiers were lost out in Colorado and Aspen, and where the rescuers had risked their lives to come and get them. And surely maybe the skiers were imprudent in being out there, and I wouldn't want to justify that. But once they were lost, there was this great outpouring of energy and strength and a great heroism among the skiers who were lost, and especially the rescuers. And I was trying to present that same thing to the collegians about Lent, of saying, let's think of it as a great period of challenge. It's so easy to go through life and just drift along, and it's all routine, and it just happens. And as you said, maybe very often we're not handling life all that well. But Lent comes here as this great challenge, like spring training, as you're saying. It's a chance to rise to the occasion, and let's take on something really tough and try to get ourselves in shape, and that it will have that same spirit as we had when the skiers were rescued then. That's the Easter spirit. It's the coming together in joy that, yes, we are alive yet, and life goes on, and that we have seen the triumph of the human spirit once more. And so I like that challenge notion. I think that's connected with the spring training. I mean, you get some of the older players. I think of Kirk Gibson going down there this year, and for the Detroit Tigers, and he was saying he wasn't going to play in games in the first week. It was more he was going to work out and try to get himself in shape. And people are asking, people are asking, can he make it? Well, I don't know if he can make it or not, but you think back, fewer players have demonstrated more courage and hung in there as he has done, and it's just sort of a trip to see him make the effort once again. I pick up on that challenge notion of the whole season, Mark.
And you look at Nolan Ryan is the same way. Here he is going into his 27th season, I believe, and it's got to be difficult. I enjoy running, and but I didn't take it up till several years ago in my mid-30s. And now to get up and to go out and run on a particular day takes a certain mental toughness to say that you're going to do it, and then to go out and do it. There are too many things that you can look around when you go outside and you say, well, I don't know, it doesn't look real promising out here, or it's kind of cold today, so maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But some of these people realize, particularly when they get into their late 30s and 40s, still young in comparison to how long they probably will live, but very old in terms of their profession, and that this is going to be, their last hurrah. You're 41 or 42, and life as you've known it all your life is about to come to an end. And you realize that going into the season, there's got to be a certain mental toughness, a challenge, so that you don't embarrass yourself this last season. You don't want to just hang on. Yeah. You want to go out with a flair. You want to go out and be a Nolan Ryan and still strike out 200 people and maybe get that 8th no-hitter. And you see him working out the same way that the lowliest rookie is working out, and in some cases more.
Yes, that's an interesting thing. I was thinking of that in relationship to Tom Kite in another sport, and he's doing so well lately, and the commentators all keep saying the same thing. Nobody has worked harder than he has. He's the last one out on the practice range, and all this success coming at the age of 43 is well-deserved. And again, it takes you back, if you want to keep up the Lenten metaphor here, and what the Christian life is all about, of that hard work and discipline. That's one of the things we learn from the athletes. That's one of the things they're doing down there in spring training, is getting in shape. And I guess the new thing we've seen in sports, maybe especially baseball, is the effort of the athletes to stay in shape year-round.
I think that's something, too, that if you get into habits are so difficult to get into. When you get into a good habit, sometimes it's very difficult to break that habit. I mean, if you're used to
you got a
getting
momentum
up,
going in a positive direction.
And I think that can be true of your life. If you get into a positive frame of mind of doing things in a certain way, spending a certain amount of time in prayer or reading the Bible or whatever it happens to be, if you get into that habit over a period of 40 days, if you say, I'm going to devote a certain amount of time each day, or I'm going to do this on Tuesdays, at the end of that 40-day period, sometimes you can almost keep it going another 2 weeks before you even realize that this period of time where you've been working to become a better human being is over. You think, geez, I've been keeping it going here a couple of extra weeks without even thinking about it anymore.
I think there's a reason for that, Mark. I think that what happens is we often feel better in those times. I mean, ahead of time we think we're going to feel worse because we're not eating the food, maybe the desserts we wanted, or we're doing the extra spiritual reading, as you suggest, and it's going to be a drag. But I believe there's a common experience that said when I'm into a good groove with discipline, that I'm actually feeling better. I'm happier about myself, happier about my life, and learning the secret of the gospel that you have to die to self in order to rise to new life, the very essence. And maybe that's why some people carry on and say, why should I stop? I got a good thing going here. I'm feeling better.
And there's another thing, too. With spring training, you have all the individuals going down and exercising, doing some of the things themselves, but they are also doing it in terms of a team. They're all working toward a common goal. And I know with my 2 children who are in CCD, we're trying to do some things as individuals for Lent. But we're also trying to do a couple of things kind of together. We'll spend a certain night where my 7-year-old, we're helping him learn a few new prayers, and my 12-year-old reading certain passages of the Bible. She's taking a book of the Bible, and she's going to read it during this period of time. So there's some things we're doing kind of together, and some things that we're doing individually, but the things that we are doing together are helping us to achieve our individual goals. And I think there's a lot of that you see with regards to, again, this kind of spring renewal. Everybody's going down there, and they're coming from Florida, and they're coming from Puerto Rico, and they're coming from Mexico, and they're coming from Canada, and all parts of the United States. They're all gathering down here in Florida with their teams, and then they're doing some communal things, working together, that are helping themselves as individuals. And I think that there's a lot of that goes on in the community of the church.
Yes, right. I think that's part of the good feeling of the spring training metaphor that we're talking about, is that there's a communal activity. And the same thing goes for the Christian life. As you know, I think one of the things that's helpful about worshiping regularly and coming to Mass regularly is that you're there with other people who are in the same struggle. And especially during the Lenten time, I think we get a feeling for that, well, there's other people here who are taking the penance seriously. I taught that at the university on Ash Wednesday. We had hundreds of students coming for ashes. They come to Mass and receive the ashes, people walking all over the campus with this black mark on their forehead. And there is a sense of solidarity in that, a sense that, well, we're in this together, and there's other people who are taking it seriously. I'm not the only nut who's trying to do some penance out here. I'm taking the religion seriously, and I'm getting support from others in that. So I think there is a certain teamwork, a sense of community that's vital in all of this. And of course, baseball has that character. It's a different kind of team game than others. And it's often the team works best when each individual performs up to their own talents and capabilities, and the team functions and flourishes because of that. So it's a different kind of teamwork than basketball or that you get in football, but it has its own quality as well. And it's really based on each person taking responsibility and having their own moment in the limelight and rising to that kind of occasion.
And there's so much concentration that has to go on in that kind of a sport. There are some things about basketball that you can do kind of one-on-one, and natural ability can overcome so many things. Or if you're 7'2", you just naturally have a better opportunity to be a center. But you see those guys that can't dribble, because it's awkward for them to do because of their size. But in baseball, you see, I think, a greater diversion in terms of size and speed and athletic ability. Freddie Patek, who played many years with Kansas City,
5'4". Yeah.
There was a player for Houston. All I can think of is the name. They call him the Toy Cannon, but I can't think of the name. He was a very short player, and he hit 20 home runs a season in a ballpark that was traditionally very difficult to hit home runs in. Joe Morgan was not a very large player, but he hit with power. A lot of it is timing and continuous practice to get yourself better.
That goes back to someone like Nolan Ryan you were talking about. I was talking to some college baseball players, and they were at Arizona State, which is a great baseball school, and they had done a lot of video work, and they had studied Nolan Ryan's motion over the years, his mechanics at the beginning of the game and at the end, and they were just all amazed at how those mechanics were steady, how they were absolutely the same on each delivery. And he's maintained that over the years, and that's all comes through constant repetition, through practice, through keeping his muscles in shape, and so on. And as young players, they were trying to learn the importance of keeping those steady mechanics. And I think that, again, it's that idea that the discipline pays off in some way. It's the Lenten notion again. If we practice and acquire habits, then we're going to be able to maintain them. That's what a virtue is an acquired habit that allows us to function well in any kind of situation. But how do you acquire a habit? By practice, by doing it over and over. And that's what the baseball players are doing, and again, in the spiritual life is what we're called upon to do. Practice the good things, and then it becomes easier. We have the phrase to put on the mind of Christ. To put on the mind of Christ means that being good is no longer just gritting your teeth and going against your nature, but now it flows out of the fact that we are thinking like the Lord, like we really have taken the story of Jesus as our model, and it flows out of our heart. That's where we'd like to get to in the spiritual life, It's the same thing that the ball players are doing, as you suggested. Repetition, mechanics, so it all comes out naturally and spontaneously.
And there's a pride, too, when you have accomplished something. When you've gotten to that point where after the spring training and after the workout, after doing things for yourself and doing things for the team, you see the fruits of your labor. It is refreshing to see that you have made strides, and you always see that at the beginning of the season. Everybody's saying, gosh, we're better than we were when we came to spring training, and this team has improved, and we're all playing better as individuals and as a team, and I think that you do see a lot of that, too, in the church. I think at the end of a Lenten season, if you've kind of worked at it, you will see people and the community both improved.
Yes. And I think that's what we keep hoping for, that's exactly what will end up happening. I remember, Mark, what you said earlier on about even if spring training goes badly, you might be 2-20 during spring training, but opening day comes and there's a new hope again.
You're in first place?
That's right. And the opening day, we're all 0-0, right? Mm-hmm. We might have blown the spring training, and yet here we've got this new opportunity. And so spring training is sort of frames an element in the whole season. It's a time of excitement. I remember being in Lakeland one time watching the Tigers and easy familiarity. It was just wonderful to see them working out and to have that sense of renewed hope that you've been talking about. And I think that the metaphor for life is a good one. It teaches us great lessons about perseverance, about hard work, about discipline, about the opportunity of beginning again, of making sure we work at all the details in life. And so spring training as a metaphor for life, Mark, I think that that's a good one, and I like a lot of the applications you made to real life existence as Christian people. I think it can indeed guide us and even offer a bit of inspiration and hope.